back at it with another video. Today I'm going to be covering aspects in astrology, as you can see right here. Right? So we're going to be talking about basically aspects, and aspects are basically how far or apart planets are, basically, right? We could also include planets to angles, which the 4 angles will be the ascendant, descendant, the IC, which would be the Imam Coli, some call that, I think it's the Nadir, if I'm saying that correctly, and the MC, which is the medium Coli, which is basically the 10th house cusp. So there could be aspects made to that too with planets that could be included in your aspects as well. So yeah, we're going to talk about the 5 major, as you can see right here, we're going to talk about the 5 major aspects. When we're finished with the 5th one, I probably would throw in another one. I like to include a 6th aspect, which I find that it kind of resonates and it tells some information in there too, in terms of chart readings as well. And then I'm going to try to show some examples between the relationships with certain planets and the zodiac, basically, which is what I drew over here, right? So we'll start with a conjunction, basically, right? A conjunction is going to be when planets are typically about 0 degrees, right? Now, these aspects, they have something known as orbs, which are how basically the proximity, which you can use when you're deciphering the 2 planets in terms of distance. Now, no astrologer is going to totally agree basically upon orbs, right? But normally when, say, like a planet between like the sun and the moon, I might give it like a 10-degree orb, right? The moon, because these are like faster moving planets, and the sun moves about a degree a day as well. So it's a blending or a merging of planetary energies, basically. So you still got to kind of know the planets and what they represent in terms of keywords, even like people, things of that nature, right? In terms of just the energy that it would give off, right? But it's basically when 2 planets are, if it's the sun and the moon, I would say I would give it, like I said, anywhere between 0 degrees and 10 degrees. Other planets may differ. Maybe down the line I might do a video on orbs, more depth, but I just want to keep it kind of simple as much as possible. But I say simple, but I'm going to elaborate more. So say for instance you got the sun and Mars making a conjunction, right? This is basically where they're about anywhere from 0 degrees to 10 degrees in terms of proximity. Some astrologers won't consider out of sign conjunctions, meaning right here when we look at the zodiac, right? Say if we have the sun at 2 degrees in Taurus, right? Which is the very beginning of Taurus. And then say you got Mars at 29 degrees of Aries. These are considered out of sign conjunctions, right? I like to consider it, but some don't. They wouldn't consider that a conjunction. So this depends on who you're going to in terms of how they interpret things. But I find that you could still get some information out of it, just at least at this point in my understanding of astrology and knowledge. So yeah, that's called the outer sect conjunction, that example. But some astrologers, like I said, do only use in signs. So if they're in the same sign, basically, like, so if the sun was at 1 degree in Taurus and then Mars was at 3 degrees in Taurus, that could be a conjunction that's in sign, basically. They would consider that a conjunction. Let's go to a sextile, right? One thing I want to know too is a sextile and a trine. These are what's known as soft aspects, basically, more positive, more flowing, basically, within your personality and within the people that the planets will represent in your chart, as an example. So a sextile is basically, you could say it's a good flow or harmonious, right, between these 2 planets or angles and planet. What I like to say is to give you a little bit of a way to remember it. When we think of the keyword in sextile, we have sex. Right, and sex a lot of times is, we want it to be a good flow, or sex feels good. If you handle your business with the right person, and y'all are in the moment. So sex is a good thing. It can be good, right? So that's the way that I kind of remember it. This is a positive aspect, basically, when 2 planets are roughly 60 degrees away, right? Now we'll go to the squares, right? So the squares are basically where 2 planets are 90 degrees away. A way that you can remember this is, well, first the keywords is, I like to use as a struggle, conflict, or tension, right? You can alternate these keywords. But the way I remember this, the red aspects, right, are opposites to the squares. These are what's known as hard aspects. They're more of a struggle. They're more of what we need to learn a lesson in these areas in your chart. Now, a way to remember square is basically if I know a lot of times people don't fight nowadays, but if someone wants to tell you square with me, yo, we got an issue, you know what I mean? If you square with somebody, you fighting. So we could say that these planets could be fighting with each other, basically. You know, if somebody's trying to catch that fade with you, they trying to fight you, basically. So a square, if you're squaring it with somebody, again, this is going to be basically a fight, right? Tension, struggle, conflict. Way to remember that. There's a little glare right here, but this is 0 degrees. Again, if you can't see the conjunction up here, right? And it says blending and merging, like I told you guys. So let's go to the trine. Trine, we see is the triangle. These right here are basically the glyphs, basically. So if you see these in your chart, that's what it represents, right? Now, the trines is where two planets or a planet in an angle is roughly 120 degrees, right? It's a good flow of energy or harmonious. It's, again, another soft aspect, just like the sextile. Keywords I just usually say is these two areas are harmonious or they're in flow together. Now, oppositions are when two planets are basically opposed to each other. They're sitting on direct opposite sides, right? So they're 180 degrees away. That's basically how far apart they are, give or take, right? You may have a planet that's in Aries at, let's say you got the moon in Aries at 2 degrees, right? And then say you got opposite of that, which is the opposition. Say in Libra, you have Saturn here, over here. And let's say at 5 degrees, you have Saturn in Libra, right? So this is still considered a opposition, but it's not exactly 180 degrees, right? So the orbs could be 2 degrees, depending on the planet, but it could be like 2 degrees. Say, again, I'm jumping around, but say that moon's at 2 degrees and Saturn over here was at 5 degrees in Libra. That's like 3 degree difference, basically, right? But they will fall still under that opposition aspect, right? And again, no astrologer is going to agree 100% on the orbs that they use in terms of the distance between the planets, but you know, this is where practice comes in, right? So one thing I want to do as well is I want to elaborate a little more in this little lesson. Another aspect that I like to include in my readings is what's known as a inconjunction or a quincunx. It's the same aspect, but we could put quincunx, right? So quincunx, or it's also known as a inconjunction, right? This is the X right here, excuse the handwriting. Alright, so y'all can see that. Alright, so this is where planets are roughly 150 degrees, right? Now, excuse the noise in the background. Give me 1 second, y'all. I'm gonna let that pass by. So, a quincunx is when two planets or a planet in an angle is roughly 150 degrees. The keywords I like to use is difficulty or a challenge, basically, right? So, difficult. This would be the relationship between the planets or planet in an angle. So difficulty or challenge. That's a keyword you use when you are trying to decipher or come up with a sentence between the planets and their relationship. I like to use keywords and everything, basically. All right. So this is some more information. Give me a moment, and I'm going to elaborate a little more. So we talked about the conjunction. Normally, a conjunction will be in the same sign, right? But again, like I said, I like to include out of sign conjunctions, but normally it will be in the same sign. So I'm going to put right here for conjunction over it, same sign. We on limited space, so I gotta do what I can do. So same sign, right? For sextiles, this is normally where each of the signs are 30 degrees. I meant to say that, right? So a sextile is going to be where the planet is roughly about 2 signs away for a sextile. It will be a good flow of energy, right? So we could put what I want to put this at. For sextile, we could put 2 signs, right? So a sextile between Mars in Aries and let's say the moon in Gemini, right? 2 signs away. 1, 2. Each of the signs set at 30 degrees. So say if something was at, if Mars was at in Aries in the first house, right here, at 9 degrees. Another 30 degrees away would be in Taurus at 9 degrees. And say the moon was at 9 degrees in Gemini, that would be about 60 degrees away, basically, from planet Mars in the first house in Aries. So that would be a sextile. They're kind of like flowing, basically. But again, you still have to know kind of the energy of Mars, which is a malefic planet, when it's making a sextile to the moon, basically, and what that would represent. So yeah, 2 signs away, 1, 2, right? Oh, another thing we could say too is, remember I said the signs are 30 degrees, right? So 30 times 2, we said 2 signs is 60. So that's just something to think about. Squares, right? Squares are going to be where the planets are, we could say, in a sign, and it's roughly about 3 signs away, basically, right? So we put 3 signs in parentheses. 3 times 30 is 90, right? So a square would be if we got Mars at the 1st degree in Aries, and let's say if we have that moon now in Cancer at the 1st degree in Cancer in the 4th house, right? That would be a square, right? So we could say 1, 2, 3, right? 3 signs away. Now trines, I would say 4 signs away, right? 4 signs away in terms of the relationship dynamic. So we got 30 degrees times 4, which would be 120. So a trine, say a trine could be between Aries, any planets between Aries and Leo. Possibly, it depends though, depending on the orbs that we're using and where at in the sign of Leo and Aries, right? I'm gonna elaborate a little more in a second. Oppositions are going to be, should be 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, because 6 times 30 is 180, so 6 times 4. This is what the opposition, I meant to write it in red, but y'all gotta bear with me. Right? Alright, so opposition is 6 signs away, right? So from Aries, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Libra, it's the exact opposite sign of Aries, so possibly planets, depending on where they're at in terms of the degree within these 2 signs, can be oppositions, right? They're opposing each other, right? Quincunxes, right, are about, I would say, 5 signs away. So for this quincunx, we're gonna put 5 signs, if y'all can read that, right? So from 1st house to 6th house, that could be a quincunx, possibly, you know what I mean? 150 degrees away, so first 30 degrees, Aries right here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 signs away, right? Now I want to give you a little more information before I wrap this up, and I may do a part 2 to this, we'll see. But let me give you some more game real quick. So we talked about the conjunctions usually are in the same sign. It doesn't always have to be, but you know, they can be, right? Now sextiles, right? They're going to share the 2 signs that will be connected 9 times out of 10. And this is not all the time because it depends on the orbs that you use, the distance, right? But for sextiles, they're going to share the same gender of a sign. Now gender is another topic. I'll probably do another video on that, gender of the signs basically. But for instance, the sextile between Gemini, a planet in Gemini, and Aries and Gemini, again, we said that's 2 signs away, and they're sharing the same gender, so they're both masculine signs. Now masculine signs basically meaning that the energy is projected outwardly, right? This would be the fire signs, and the air signs would be masculine, and the feminine signs would be earth and water, basically, right? So another way you can remember that is fire. Aries is a fire sign and Gemini is air. In order to keep a fire going, we need fire and oxygen, or air, basically, right? Now, when we think of a sextile between earth and water, it's a good flow of energy, right? We said good flow of energy, harmonious. And in order to grow plants, you need that earth. You need, other things too, but you need earth, right? And you need water, basically, to grow the plants, just as a little way to, remember that. But yeah, they're sharing the same gender, because Aries and Gemini are both male or masculine signs, right? Energy is projected outwardly. Now squares, right, are sharing the same modality, right? But they're still having some type of tension because, for instance, from Aries to Cancer, they're in the same modality, meaning that they're both cardinal signs, right? Cardinal is action initiating, basically, type of energy. Trailblazing energy, right? So they're sharing the same modality, right? But at the same time, fire and water don't necessarily go together. Aries and Cancer, right? In terms of the element. So that's just something to think about. And again, write this down, take notes. Squares, right, we said are 3 signs away, so 1, 2, 3 from Aries to Cancer. They are sharing the same modality, Aries and Cancer, same modalities, but the elements don't go together. Same thing we can say if we want to look at Capricorn to Libra. These are both sharing the same modality. They're both cardinal as well. 2 of the other cardinal signs. They would make a square. 1, 2, 3 signs away from each other, from Libra to Capricorn, or vice versa. But Earth and air don't necessarily go together, right? Let's go to the trine. So trines are going to share the same element, right? But the modalities can be different, but they share the same element, right? So a trine could be from Scorpio to Pisces, right? Same element, so they kind of flow with each other to a certain degree. But the modalities in terms of cardinal, mutable, fixed, right? So the modalities would be different, right? But again, they're sharing the same element. So Aries and Leo, this would be a trine, or this could be a trine of certain planets are coming through it, depending on the orb. And they would share the same element, right? Both fire. From Gemini to Aquarius, they're both in the same element of air. They could possibly trine any planets that are there. Oh, another thing I want to say too, when we go back to the trines before we get to the oppositions, the trines are going to be not only in the same element, but they're both feminine, right? For the most part. There are times where it could be in another sign and it could still trine, but majority of the time it's going to be in the same, they have the same gender, right? So again, Pisces and Scorpio share the same element, and they're both in the same gender, excuse me. Oppositions, right? From Aries to Libra, could be an opposition, possibly depending on the planets that are there. And they're in the same modality. These 2 signs are both cardinal, right? Aries is the start of the spring equinox. Cancer is the start of the summer solstice. Libra is the autumn or fall equinox. Capricorn would be the winter solstice, right? But these signs are all cardinal, so they share the same modality. From Aries opposing Libra, they're like opposite energies, so it'd be again, it feel like an obstacle or choice. You gotta balance these areas out. Now, quincunxes basically have nothing to do with each other. From Aries to Virgo in the 6th, Aries on the 1st, they don't share anything really in common. So in terms of the modality, cardinal and mutable have nothing to do with each other. They're 2 different ways that the energy plays out. Fire and earth have nothing to do with each other in terms of one is masculine, one is feminine. Virgo is a feminine sign. Aries is masculine, energy is projected outwardly. And when we think of the elements, fire and earth have nothing to do with each other. This is just a little lesson in aspects. Maybe I'll do a part 2 where I dive deeper and give you some examples of ways that I would interpret this, right? Because there's so many ways to break down even the aspects. You can look at it by planets, you can look at it by planets and signs, and you can look at it as planets and signs and houses, right? So again, make sure y'all stay tuned. I appreciate y'all, and we got more videos coming soon. Alright, y'all, peace.